The moment her father slammed the contract onto the table, Mireya felt something inside her chest shatter so loudly she was certain the whole house could hear it. The paper trembled under his hand, but not from hesitation, only from impatience. Outside, the afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, casting a warm glow that felt cruelly out of place against the cold decision being forced upon her. She wasn't being asked. She wasn't being persuaded. She was being traded. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Wisdom Story House in all English, because stories like this remind us that even in the darkest moments, something beautiful can still be born. Mireya had always known her family valued status above all else. Their name carried weight in business circles, but behind closed doors, everything was fragile, built on debts and desperate deals. When the company began to collapse, her father didn't look for solutions, he looked for sacrifices. And Mireya, his only daughter, became the easiest one to offer. The man she was being forced to marry was described in the simplest, most dismissive way possible. A poor single father. No connections. No influence. A man who ran a modest roadside café in a quiet town far from the glittering world Mireya had grown up in. His name was Kaelen Rourke. To her father, he was nothing more than a convenient solution to an inconvenient problem. Mireya had seen the agreement. It was blunt. In exchange for the marriage, Kaelen would assume certain financial burdens tied to her family's failing empire. It made no sense to her. Why would a struggling man take on such weight? Why would he agree to this arrangement? But her questions were dismissed with a cold wave of her father's hand. The wedding happened under a bright sky that mocked her silent grief. It was a small ceremony, far from the lavish events she once imagined. No grand ballroom. No sparkling chandeliers. Just a quiet garden and a handful of witnesses who seemed more curious than celebratory. Mireya stood in a simple white dress, her hands trembling slightly, while Kaelen stood beside her, calm and composed, holding his young daughter in his arms. The little girl, Eloan, clung to him with a soft innocence that made Mireya's heart ache. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Her tiny fingers gripped the fabric of his shirt, and her wide eyes studied Mireya with a mix of curiosity and quiet hope. That was the first moment something shifted. Not enough to erase Mireya's resentment. Not enough to soften the betrayal she felt. But enough to plant a small, stubborn seed of doubt. Maybe this man wasn't what she had been told. Their new life began in a modest home near the café Kaelen owned. It was nothing like the mansion Mireya had grown up in. The walls were simple, the furniture worn but clean, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee seemed to linger in every corner. At first, the quiet felt suffocating. There were no servants, no constant noise, no distractions. Just the rhythm of an ordinary life she had never known. Kaelen didn't try to force closeness. He gave her space, speaking only when necessary, his voice steady and respectful. There was no arrogance in him, no bitterness either. It confused her more than anything else. Days turned into weeks, and Mireya began to notice things she hadn't expected. Kaelen woke up before sunrise every day, preparing breakfast for Eloan before heading to the café. He packed her lunch, brushed her hair with gentle patience, and never once seemed rushed or irritated. When Eloan laughed, it filled the entire house with warmth. Mireya found herself watching them more often than she admitted. The way Kaelen listened to his daughter as if her words mattered more than anything in the world. The way he knelt to her level when she spoke, giving her his full attention. It was a kind of love Mireya had never experienced growing up. One afternoon, she decided to visit the café. It wasn't grand, but it was alive. The place buzzed with soft conversations, laughter, and the comforting clatter of cups and plates. Customers greeted Kaelen by name, their faces lighting up when they saw him. He moved through the space with quiet confidence, greeting everyone with genuine warmth. Mireya stood near the entrance, watching as he helped an elderly man carry his tray to a table, refusing any extra payment with a simple smile. It didn't match the image she had been given of a struggling, desperate man. If anything, he seemed respected. Over time, Mireya began helping at the café. At first, it was out of necessity. Then, slowly, it became something else. She learned how to take orders, how to prepare simple meals, how to smile at strangers and mean it. The work was tiring, but it grounded her in a way she hadn't expected. The townspeople began to accept her. Some were curious about her past, but most treated her with kindness. For the first time in her life, Mireya felt like she was part of something real. And Kaelen, he never changed. He remained patient, steady, and quietly supportive. He never reminded her of the arrangement that had brought them together. He never demanded affection or gratitude. He simply existed beside her, offering small acts of kindness that slowly chipped away at the walls around her heart. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the café windows, Mireya noticed something unusual. A sleek black car pulled up outside, far too expensive for a place like this. A sharply dressed man stepped out, his posture rigid, his expression serious. He walked straight to Kaelen. Mireya watched as the two spoke in low voices. Kaelen's expression didn't change much, but there was a subtle tension in his shoulders. After a few moments, he nodded, said something brief, and the man left just as quickly as he had arrived. When Kaelen returned to the counter, Mireya couldn't hold back her curiosity. He hesitated before answering. Then, with a quiet sigh, he told her the truth. Kaelen Rourke wasn't poor. He wasn't struggling. He was, in fact, the wealthiest man in the country. The café, the modest home, the simple life, it was all a choice. Years ago, after building an empire that spanned industries and continents, Kaelen had walked away from it all. The pressure, the betrayal, the endless hunger for more, it had cost him his wife, Eloan's mother, who had died during a time when he had been too consumed by work to notice how fragile everything had become. He had left that world behind to raise his daughter in peace. The marriage agreement had been no accident. Kaelen had known Mireya's father. He had seen the desperation, the greed, and the willingness to sacrifice his own child. And something in Mireya's situation had struck a chord with him. He didn't marry her to save her family. He married her to give her a way out. The truth hit Mireya like a storm. Everything she thought she knew unraveled in an instant. The resentment she had carried, the assumptions she had made, they all felt painfully small now. Kaelen had never needed anything from her. He had chosen this. Days passed in a haze of emotions. Mireya struggled to process everything, to reconcile the man she thought she had married with the man he truly was. But the more she reflected, the clearer things became. Nothing about him had been a lie. His kindness was real. His patience was real. His love for his daughter was real. And slowly, painfully, Mireya realized something else. Her feelings were real too. She began to see their life not as something forced upon her, but as something she had grown into. The laughter shared over simple meals, the quiet moments watching Eloan play, the sense of purpose she found at the café, it was all genuine. One afternoon, as the sunlight danced across the floor of their home, Mireya found Kaelen sitting with Eloan, helping her draw. The little girl's laughter filled the room, and Kaelen's eyes softened in a way that made Mireya's chest tighten. In that moment, she understood. Wealth wasn't measured in numbers or possessions. It was measured in moments like this. In love, in presence, in the quiet strength of choosing what truly mattered. As the days turned brighter and their bond deepened, Mireya found herself smiling more, laughing more, living more. The pain of her past didn't disappear, but it no longer defined her. She had been forced into a marriage she never wanted. But somehow, against all odds, she had found a life she never imagined. And just before we reach the end of this story, take a moment to comment the word hope if you believe life can still surprise us in the most beautiful ways. In the end, Mireya stood once again in the warm glow of a sunny afternoon, but this time, everything was different. She wasn't trapped. She wasn't broken. She was standing beside Kaelen and Eloan, her heart full in a way she had never known before. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and engage with the video, because stories like this remind us that sometimes, what feels like the worst beginning can lead to the most extraordinary ending.